You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof. Let's get into today's episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode down at the Oklahoma Hall of Fame today with Mr. Andy Nelson from Nelson Landscaping. I've been around you for a while, I guess, seen you at the car shows and showing up, and you always kind of, everyone knows when you pull in, because you pull in something that generally people want to take photos of and start chasing, other than Zach showing up in his helicopter. I would put you next.
Of course.
Still can't believe he did that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
But thanks for coming down. Excited to hear your story and dive into it, because just from the little bit that I know, it seems like kind of like the real American dream.
Sure.
Right? You know,
yeah,
just,
it's the way I've experienced it.
Yeah, just kind of starting as a boy and wanting to get into cars and knowing that cutting grass is an easy way to make money, and now here we are.
Yeah.
So for people listening, I guess tell us a little bit about kind of what Nelson Landscaping is right now, and then we'll go back to the whole backstory.
Sure. So we specialize in design build. Most of our clientele is just kind of like a high-end residential, people that are happy where they're at and they're just wanting to make it everything they want. Front yard, backyard, outdoor living space is real popular right now. Pergolas, cabanas, swimming pools. So basically anything on the outside of the house, we can provide, a turnkey solution for you. A lot of people might do one or two of those things, but we can go in and literally make it all happen.
Yeah. So back to the start, growing up here in Edmond, the goal was, to have a good time, but also, like, I did see that you have a love of football, which I call football, you call soccer.
Right,
but you have a love of soccer from a young age.
Yeah, well, and American football too, but
yeah.
OU football is one of my biggest passions as well. But yeah, soccer, grew up playing it, at Claiborne Elementary School, where I went to elementary school. I learned about soccer on the playground, and I loved it. And there's a guy older than me by grade, and he was just doing all this footwork, and I was so impressed by that. So I just started copying him and realized, man, that's really successful on the soccer field. And so I told my parents I wanted to play, and I grew up playing soccer, and I still play.
Yeah.
So at 39 years old, it's a little more painful to recover, but still play, still love it just as much. And now my 6-year-old daughter plays, and she's doing great with it.
Yeah.
So.
That's a whole nother animal of like club level and travel. And then,
yes.
It's not it's intense.
We're 6 years old, and we're going to Dallas this weekend for a tournament in 103-degree temperatures. And it so happens we're playing like two of the top Dallas clubs, but one of the clubs, Solar, is literally the number one club in the country right now for their girls team. So like we're just going to get in there and probably get smashed.
At the age of 6.
At the age of 6. And I'm as intense and, I get as excited and as disappointed in 6-year-old soccer as I do in anything. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But, it's passion. You love it.
So was soccer the first love before cars?
No, cars were number one from the time I could crawl.
Yeah.
I chased my mom around the house with my Hot Wheels. Anytime I got, I think when I was 5 years old, I started getting a little bit of allowance if I did my chores, and all that money went to Hot Wheels. They used to be 50 cents, and I would go buy a couple of them every time we went to Walmart. So yeah. I've got a huge Hot Wheel collection. I still have it. It's in my mom's fiddleback spider riddled attic that I refuse to go in. So one day I'll have somebody go up there and pull them out. But I've got quite a collection. I can't wait to see what all I've got, really.
Yeah.
It'll bring back good memories.
Yeah, for us, they were like 99 pence, right? And you'd always go, every time I'd go out with my mum shopping or something, be like, can I get a Hot Wheels? She's like, yeah, sure. And you'd get, like I said, you build a collection, and
yes.
I think Matchbox cars were a little before that. And it's just
I forgot.
so good to
the
watch.
Matchbox. Yeah, I probably have as many Matchbox cars as I do Hot Wheels.
Yeah, just so much fun there. But the thing now is like it's evolved over time, right? And now we have amazing YouTube shows to watch and cars, and like I'm doom scrolling before I go to bed, like down all the YouTube channels, and there's so much great content out there now compared to what there was when we grew up, which is a plus. But
yeah, it was forums forever. You know, I spent hours reading forums and getting in debates and all the different forums of all the different car platforms I loved, and then YouTube's really taken over that.
Yeah. So then, obviously, from a young age, cars is the thing. When do you realize that like I'm going to be able to drive one of these and I actually need money?
At 12.
Okay.
At 12 years old, you know, I was spending most of my money at that point on baseball cards, money I was earning around the house. I'd pull weeds for $2 an hour. My parents had a real small advertising company. They really taught me a lot in that, just what hard work and consistency can bring. And, you know, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, but I never had a want for anything. But, you know, I'd work, so I'd put little packets together for them, sample packets to show clients or potential clients of what their coupons look like, and then cut the grass. My dad paid me minimum wage, $4.25 an hour to cut our 5-acre lawn. So at 10, I started doing that, and I would mow for 7 hours straight. The only reason I'd get off of it, the mower, is to fill it with gas. And I would have mowed every day if he had let me, but it was once a week, no more. He didn't want to spend more than $30 a week keeping his 5-acre property maintained.
Yeah.
But at 12, I spent my money on baseball cards, and then realized, okay, I've got to save thousands for a car. I've got 4 summers to do it, so let's get something cool.
Yeah.
And my first car was '89 Camaro. It was a $3,000 car at the time. So nothing crazy, but it was a really fun car, good experience, and but it didn't last long. I wanted more. So shortly after that, it was another summer, I got a 3000 GT, and that was a game changer.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, now we're driving a real sports car. So it was a 92 Burgundy on black, 5-speed manual. I wanted a VR4, but insurance was insane.
Yeah.
So I had to get the naturally aspirated 222 horsepower hot rod.
Beast.
It was a beast.
Yeah. So you grew up with kind of like a pretty good example of entrepreneurship with your parents being entrepreneurs then.
I was very blessed. You know, my mom and dad, I couldn't ask for a better upbringing. I'm very fortunate in that regard. Just how they disciplined me. I didn't get in a lot of trouble. They'd kick my butt pretty good, and I didn't want to disappoint them. But I was just busy too. I stayed out of trouble because I was either playing sports or working. But yeah, like, you know, my dad worked hard Monday through Thursday and Fridays mornings, and then Friday afternoons he was done. And I love that model. I still practice that, or I try to. But, you know, I went for years growing my business. I went 70, 80-hour weeks, but I didn't have a family at the time, and I had the ability to do that. But yeah, like my mom and dad, I always had a good example of them. They were always working and just stayed disciplined and consistent, and they ran a good household and a good business.
Yeah. I'm sure dad was, pretty happy to see your work ethic at that young age. Yeah,
and it's, you know, I'm curious where it came from. It's not like he ever like pushed for it.
Right.
And like with my daughter, 6-year-old, I don't think she's going to have my work ethic. You know, it's like I'm trying to see what comes organically from her, but like getting her to pick up her socks on the floor is just like, oh my gosh, Dad, are you serious? So we'll see what comes of her. She's very independent and is a big time leader. So I feel like she's got some really important aspects to run a company, but the work part, and she can be lazy on the soccer field too at practice, you know, but she's 6. So I'm like, I don't have a roadmap for this. I don't know what to expect, but you know, at 6, I didn't like picking up my room either. I hated it. So who knows? Yeah.
But it seems at 12 you came like obsessed, locked in on what you wanted or what you needed to do, right?
Yes.
So then it was just everything I need is to make some money so I can get a car, right?
Obsessed.
Yeah.
I wish there was a stronger like rational word than obsessed in the dictionary, because like I've tried to explain my passion for cars, and obsessed is just not a strong enough word.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I was obsessed.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing that we see over time. Like we see all these successful business owners and entrepreneurs. Like it's kind of like, and Gary Keller wrote a book called The One Thing. Like they just focus on that one thing.
Yeah.
You know, we have plenty of friends who have done that. You know, Brett's great with real estate. Zach's in commercial real estate. You know, you've got all these guys who, you know, just focused on that one thing, and that was it. Like it wasn't, you know, and it clearly works. It's sometimes people realize that too late.
Right.
But it's great at 12 to do that.
Yeah, and you know, in 2010, I started a performance shop. I got tired of sending my car to some local shops that just couldn't get it right, and so I was like, you know, I started some other companies. I did that and did a storm shelter company. And I thought, okay, I've got to have multiple businesses to get where I want to get financially. And then, you know, I got spread way too thin, and the car shop started struggling. The mechanics couldn't get along with the manager. So that was just always a thing. And then, so I ended up dissolving that company and selling it to the mechanics, because you can't have a shop without mechanics. So I couldn't fire the mechanics, even though I should have, and kept the manager I had in place. He was a rock star. He's actually in my landscape business now. And we could have found more mechanics, but at the time I thought, I've got 20 cars in the shop. I can't do this without the mechanics. And then it was mainly one of them. One of them's Gold. He still operates that shop today. I love the guy, but his partner in crime was, anyway, I'll leave that for another day.
Yeah. But you realized you didn't need multiple businesses. You realized
you didn't. Once I got rid of that, my partner in the storm shelter company was going to go back to being a missionary in Africa. So I'm just like, how do I argue that?
Yeah.
Like, he's helping with sex trafficking. I can't be mad at him. But once I realized, like, okay, like I'm going to get zeroed in on this. This was 2012. After I dabbled with those companies, and they had great success for the short time, but my bread and butter landscape business was struggling, you know, and so I was like, I'm just going to get zeroed in, focused on this one thing, and I know, well, I'm just going to see if I can get to where I want to get.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been able to get where I want to be.
Right.
So
is there like, you know, when you kind of start at 12 and you know going through high school, you obviously have a love for soccer. For the sake of the podcast, I'll say soccer. Do you stop the business and go to college in the meantime? Or do you and does the business pick up back up after you graduate? Like, what's the plan when you're like 18 in high school thinking?
So I was semi burned out in soccer. Mm-hmm. I was playing at a high level, and I had some college scholarship offers. But my business at that point, I mean, when I was 15, 16, I had employees working during the day while I was in school.
Yeah.
You know, so I had a business that was legitimately running. I was making good money. Still in high school, so like I was making good enough money where like I knew I could do this the rest of my life. I didn't need college, but Oklahoma Christian School in Edmond offered me a scholarship, and I knew the coach, and I love the coach, and so you know I was like, well, I'm going to play soccer, you know, college sports. I know it's demanding, but I think I can work around it like I had with high school.
Yeah.
And so, but that summer, that coach stepped away and went into pharmaceutical sales, and the coach they brought in, I didn't want to play for. So I was like, you know what? Forget it. I'm burned out of soccer anyway. I'm not leaving my business to go to a school, you know, out of state that recruited me. Even like further out of town, hours away or hour away. I'm just going to get locked in on my business. And ended up playing a little bit of soccer and got a scholarship at UCO. It was club level soccer. It's not like NCAA or NAIA, but it was competitive enough to be fun. And they gave me a scholarship. So I literally went to UCO just to play soccer.
Yeah.
And it did nothing but get in the way of my business growth. We were really starting to take off. In 2006, I'd bought my friend, Zach, you know Zach. Mm-hmm. I bought his lawn business because that's where he started. So overnight, I basically doubled in size. And so that was about the time I said enough is enough with school. Actually, I quit school probably 2004 or 5.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that's kind of how that went down.
Right, that makes sense, because it's like you said, you're playing for the love of the game. You're not playing for a degree to go on to sit in an
Literally
office and
went
do
to
nothing.
school to play soccer,
Yeah.
and it was fun. We got to get on shuttle buses and go play teams. OU had a men's club team, and OSU did. And you have a state championship, and we'd go to Ada and play, whatever school was out. I mean, and you got all of the benefit of playing college soccer, the fun side of it.
Right.
And we were really good. We won like 7 state championships in a row. Not that it's like winning a national championship or anything, or playing Division I soccer.
It
but
helps when you're winning.
Yeah, it helps when you're winning.
It's enjoyable.
Yeah, and it wasn't demanding. It was 2 practices a week and a game or 2, and it was just fun. And you got all the perks of scholarship and getting fed and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, it served as a pretty good release to get you away from the business as well.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah,
but the cars is the biggest. Yeah,
sure.
But yeah, soccer. I mean, yeah, it's always been that for sure.
So when you've realized that, like, I'm going back to the business, it's time to grow this, your mid 2000s, like, technology's starting to grow a little bit at that point, isn't it? So, but at that point, what was the business like at that point? Are you just like mowing grass at that point, or when does like the actual landscaping stuff come in and you start taking on bigger projects? Yeah,
so I cut grass, and means of marketing back then was, door-to-door flyers, coupons in the mail. And so I'd pay my parents to, that was up to 2005. My dad passed away in 2005, had some health issues. And so, but before that, mailing out flyers was how you picked up more yards. And so in 2008, I had a really nice property that wanted their house landscaped. This was actually, if we've got time, I'll tell you about my first landscape.
Yeah,
it's worthwhile cause.
40 minutes.
Yeah. My very first landscape, 2007, is a guy at my church, Mark Walker. And I was cutting his grass, and he said, "Hey, I want my front yard landscaped." I was sitting at Mazzio's on Broadway in Edmond on Sunday night. We're having this conversation. That was the spot after church every Sunday night to go eat. He's like, "Let's landscape my front yard." And I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever. And so he's like, "How much do you think it'll cost?" And just kind of in like a almost arrogant I said, you give me $500, I'll make it look amazing. I had no idea. And $500, I'm used to mowing $25 lawns, so I'm thinking $500. This is amazing. So I go to TLC, a local nursery, which is really expensive nursery anyway, but I didn't know any better. And start just picking out stuff, not knowing anything about landscaping. Is it full shade, full sun? What kind of dirt does he have? All this stuff. And I just start picking out stuff I thought was pretty. And I get to the register, and it's like $1,500 worth of crap. I'm like, oh no, what have I done? And so I take it all back, all this pretty lush, bigger stuff, and I take it all back and start picking out just some crap. Because I'm like, okay, I'll buy $300 worth of plants. So anyway, my girlfriend, who's my wife girlfriend at the time, Kirsten, I'm like, "Babe, I way oversold this thing, and now it's gonna not look great. So like, I can't even afford to pay my guys to do this. I've got to go do it." I was kind of punishing myself, literally. So we went over there. We spent an entire day planning all this stuff, trying to make it look presentable. And at the end of the day, it ended up making like $2.81 an hour for the time we spent and how much extra money I had. So, and a week later, it all died. So, fortunately, TLC's got a warranty program, but I took it all back and got all new stuff again, and it all struggled. It never looked good, and he was never happy with it, and it was a huge learning curve. So fast forward a year, and I have this client, Oakdale Farms neighborhood on a 1 acre lot, beautiful house, 5,000 square foot, but it needed they were redoing everything on the inside of the house. So he said, "Andy, can you landscape the front of my house?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." I was just, at that point, I'd say yes to everything. One of the best things I learned over time, you learn to say yes to get to $1 million revenue company, you say yes to everything. To move past that, you learn how to say no. And that was definitely something valuable I learned because I stopped doing that. But yeah, so I told him yes. He's like, what's a budget? And again, I just kind of shot out of my backside and said $5,000. And at this point, I'm like, okay, 5,000, I can really do some damage with this. But I didn't realize how vast his front yard beds were. And so I happened to hear about a landscape architect that just did design work. So I hired her out. And I went and priced it out, and I asked some professionals like what I should charge for this, and it came out to $28,000. I told the guy $5,000, and so went in there. I was embarrassed, tail between my legs, and I said, "Man, I know I told you $5,000. This is what we've got, but it's gonna be $28,000." And he loved the plans. He was like, "All right, let's do it." And I just about fell out of his kitchen chair, and so I went and learned about all this stuff that we were doing. I mean, it's a major undertaking. And in 10 days, we knocked out a $28,000 landscape. And, I made good money on that. And it was very eye-opening. And it was that point, from 2008 on, I started focusing more and more on design, build, new construction properties or rehabs like that one, remodel. And that became our specialty. 2012 is when I really hit the gas. I started hiring management to manage more crews. I still had maintenance at the time, but that's when I started really marketing like 3D landscape design. And you mentioned technology. So at this point, marketing had changed and it was a lot more online, less mailbox. And so I was having to learn all that. It took me years to get that dialed in, but now we've got it pretty well dialed in to where, I can turn up the wick on the marketing if we need more calls or whatever. 2017, I sold all of our maintenance off. And that was the best thing I've ever done. Maintenance was like my comfort blanket. You get that revenue in every week, but
just cutting lawns and
just cutting grass, and cleaning out beds,
weed eating, all stuff like that.
Yeah. So, and we had like 3 in-house crews for that full time.
How many like lawns do you have at that point to let go of?
250.
Okay.
Nothing crazy. I was making a good living at that. But what's crazy is even today in 2022, even with inflation like it's been, like yards that I mowed in 1995 for $35 are still being mowed today for $35. And in 2017, I've got at that point I probably had 20 or 30 guys. I think it was like 22 guys or something whenever I sold the maintenance. And I had to have workman's comp, pay payroll tax. All these guys were W-2 employees. Like I had to be legitimate. Insurance, liability insurance. And there's just no way to make money doing it like that. Mm-hmm. And so I just sold off that portion of my company, and guy ran it into the ground. And he was actually a very affluent guy. Didn't need the business. He was just bored. He was older. And I was really planning on selling it to somebody that was going to own or operate, like I did.
Right.
And they would have succeeded. Yeah. And he was just wanting to stay in his office, hire a guy and run it, and it just went bad quick. But, fortunately he didn't need it. But yeah, and then so once I shed all that dead weight, our landscape design build stuff has really blossomed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if people, and I'll post the link to the social media page because you guys do a great job of kind of doing the before and afters and just kind of seeing. And over the last 2 or 3 years, I think you've definitely paid more attention to social media because I've seen it elevate and kind of got, much more better content. You seem like you have, a handle on that.
Yeah,
and
thanks,
it's cool
Chad.
to see. Yeah. And, because and some of like the sorority houses you've done and the bigger projects, like people love to see like it from pen and paper design to like coloring design, and then it's like, wow, this is the drone shot and it's perfect. Looks exactly the same, right? So that's kind of
really neat. I love the process, and I genuinely love, and I think it's important. I love landscaping, and like I don't know where that came from either. I think that evolved. Like I didn't grow up loving landscaping, but I think I loved the money that it produced. Sure. And then once I learned more about it, I began loving the process of it. And like, when I take my family to Walt Disney World, like I'm checking out the amazing flowers and the plant and the landscaping why my girl's chasing down Mickey Mouse. It's like, God, look at that arrangement over there, because it is really truly insane. Like, even if you don't appreciate landscaping, you got to appreciate what they do at Walt Disney World. But knowing how much that stuff costs, the millions and millions and millions of dollars they spend, so I've gotten to where I love landscaping for sure. Even if I've always told my wife, like, all of these center medians around town are like off the highway, like trees that are just like mangled and need trimmed, or like beds along a center median that are just overgrown, and nobody wants to. The city can't afford to maintain them properly. Like, when I'm retired, I'm literally going to have me and hopefully Felipe. He's my guy. I hired him in 2008. It's just going to be me and him going and trimming stuff, and it's like just making the city prettier. Like, I will enjoy that. If I'm not pressured and I'm not in a rush to do anything, I can sit out there and pull weeds and trim up stuff like all day long. I love it. So
there's some people listening that just think that is like, I'd rather just chew on a door.
And that's what gives us a job.
Exactly.
So I'm grateful for you people that are like that.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
I can just don't have I'm the guy who would put plastic flowers in his flower bed, so that they look decent all year round from a distance, and when you get close, you just pick them out and switch them over.
Yes.
But talking of kind of like, obviously, the first love of cars, and that's kind of what fuels this work ethic and this kind of involvement through business like every day. Obviously you've answered these questions a million times. What's the ones you shouldn't have sold and the ones you wish you'd have bought because now they're worth $20 million or whatever. But kind of, it seems like you want to experience as many cars as possible. You don't seem to keep stuff for long.
So what I've found a trend, cars that I really love seem to stick around for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
That's been a consistent thing. And I don't know why it's that time frame. My first love was a 99 C5 hardtop Corvette. I poured my blood, sweat, and tears into that car. Had 1,000 horsepower back when nobody had 1,000 horsepower. The thing was a rocket in 2003, 2004. Yeah, now that's just, obviously you got Tesla doing that in a sedan with crazy torque. Mm-hmm. But so what I've kind of, and it's a constant work in progress on trying to see like what I really want in cars. What I've learned probably a decade or so ago is like, don't worry about the car. Like, what do you want out of the car? Like, what are the traits you want in a car? And so like the stuff that's important to me is like sound. Obviously it's got to be fast. I've been a horsepower junkie from day one. As I've gotten older, luxury and comfort has become a thing. Like GT2 RS is a great car. I really wanted one, and I rode in one, and it just about rattled my teeth out. And I'm like, this is not for me. So as I've gotten older, it's definitely evolved. It's all subjective. This is what I like. But good ride, blazing fast, preferably doesn't depreciate like a rock. And, I've just got these different traits, and I'll categorize it and score it, and then it's like, okay, well, what cars can fulfill this? And usually it doesn't. Usually it requires more than one car to get all that stuff done. And another thing I've come to realize too is like, as far as like the car I drive the most, like I call it daily drivable exotic, like that car. For me, it's like, what's the best car I can comfortably afford and that daily drive? Like for me, in a perfect world, if I could afford a Chiron, preferably the 300 plus Super Sport that does 304 miles an hour, like that would be my perfect daily driver. Right. And what's crazy is, I've driven a Veyron. Like that's a car that it doesn't have any sacrifices except for the maintenance cost. And I take that into account too. But like, I want to have the most, like the nicest daily drivable exotic I can comfortably afford. So like right now it's a 765 LT. I did that with the 720 for a long time, for 3 years, put 33,000 miles on it, but I think I'll outrun that pretty fast in the 765. It's just, it does everything great. And so, and it's so 4 or 5 years, it'll probably take that for something to come out that will eclipse that. Yeah. I would imagine, it's a Spider, the top comes down. So, the cars I've had for 4 or 5 years were my Vet, Then I kind of had a multitude of Vipers. I went through a Viper phase. So like that was like a 5-year phase of multiple Vipers. But then the ultimate Viper, after experiencing all of that, was a 2,000 horsepower twin turbo Viper that I raced. You know, it was a Lambo hunter. I was wanting to race the underground racing guys, and I had good success with it. I won some big events and placed second a couple times at some big events. And that was, you know, I had that car for 4 or 5 years. I loved it. And it took having a kid to get me out of that scene. And I was at Thunder Valley one night on a local event and almost crashed the car twice. One guy ran across the track and almost took me out. And then another time I got out of the groove and was doing 180 miles an hour at the end of the track. And I thought I hit the wall, but I didn't. But I got out of the groove and it took everything in me to get the car under control. But my 4-month-old was sitting there watching, or I mean, she didn't know what she was watching, but
she was there.
My wife and 4-month-old were at the starting line watching all this happen. And I got to the pits, the first thing out of my mouth was like, this isn't fun. Yeah. I told my wife. And, you know, she's a rock star. She supports whatever I want to do with cars. And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, I mean, I've almost crashed twice tonight. You know, you guys are way more important to me. And so, you know, it took me 6 months I'd toiled knowing I should sell the car. I toiled with it for 6 months. I finally sold it. I've just never looked back. I've never looked back on that. But so that was a car I kept for about 5 years. And then in the meantime, in 2012, I'd bought a Gallardo. I kept that car for 5 years. And again, it was a daily drivable exotic. It did a lot of things great. But you know, it had some sacrifices. Cars hadn't evolved quite enough at that point. You know, it's 2004 technology. So after the Gallardo, I went to, I got a twin turbo Gallardo, drove that for a year. I was like, this is amazing, but it's got some sacrifices. The ride's kind of rough. I'm kind of tired of Gallardos. I'd had a couple of other ones that I bought and sold. So I was like, I really want a twin turbo Huracan. I've had so much fun with a turbo platform. And I'm a horsepower junkie, so I bought a twin turbo Huracan underground car. It was already done, turnkey. And in a 4-month span, I broke the transmission, took 4 months to fix, and then broke another transmission 1,000 miles later.
Yeah.
And at that point, 2018, they didn't have the, you know, the billet transmissions dialed in yet. And I was just like, gosh, I know now, like all the emotional and financial strain of a race car like the Viper, like I'd had my fill. And so I was like, I'm not signing up for this on the Huracan. I spent $75,000 repairing the Huracan. You know, I had it for a year, $75,000 in repairs. I only got 5 months of enjoyability out of it. So I was like, what's something that's pretty dang reliable and it's fast and comfortable, serves all my, you know, because I was good. I literally daily drove the twin turbo Huracan. Yeah. And that was another thing too. I was going 200 miles an hour on a regular basis, you know, because at that point I was working 70, 80 hours a week in my landscape company, working on getting management into place. And, you know, I was driving too fast. You know, at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was doing excessive speeds. And one night I was stuck my 3-year-old into bed, and I was just like, I've got a guilty conscience. Like one of these days, a tire's going to let loose or something bad's going to happen. So that was another draw of selling something like that. So anyway, that's when I got the 720. I had it for 3 years, still have it. And it's the first car I've ever experienced that does everything great. It's exotic. Doors go up, which is cool. It actually makes getting in and out really easy for a 6'2" dude that's getting older. It's been dead nuts reliable, and it's fast enough. You know, a good gauge for me on what's fast enough is Isabella, my 6-year-old, doesn't make her tummy hurt, because she'll say that makes my tummy hurt, and it does that. I mean, you know, I think if a car quarter mile traps 140 miles an hour or faster, that is enough for me. Yeah. So, cars that are slower than that just don't. Even the Ford GT doesn't quite give me that feeling in your stomach, like roller coaster feeling, quite as much. But 720 and then the 765 just turns up the wick. Everything about it is just insane.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, speed is a thing. Have you ever thought about track racing though? It seems like obviously drag racing is the big thing in the States, but have you ever thought about kind of doing the, I don't know, Ferrari challenge or just jumping in a like a GT3 or something and getting out there?
Yeah, so I actually in 08-09, I raced in the VRL Viper Racing League when I was hot in the Vipers, and so it was all it was a road racing league. So for a couple of years I road raced. It kind of started with the local Viper club. We would just go to Hallett, and then my competitive nature, I wanted more. So I joined the Viper Racing League, and we were racing. I was racing all over the Midwest, from Iowa to Texas, and actually having pretty good results. They had 3 amateur levels. I was in the highest amateur level, and then they had the comp coupe, the factory race cars that raced, and some of those like bigger races would be on TV. And so it was just a really neat experience. But whenever the economy collapsed, that racing league kind of went away, and it never came back. And I realized too, like I had the track up in Iowa, I had gone off the track at like 110 miles an hour. My brake fluid had boiled, and so I experienced what it's like to go off the track at high speeds, and I realized I'm kind of out of my element. Like I had the minimum safety standards. They had roll hoops installed in the car, not even roll cage, and I'm out there racing. Like I was in a time trial with comp coupes all around me, so like these guys were flying by me in their full roll cage race cars, and so I was definitely out of my league there. And then I bought a GT3 new in 2015, and I took it up to Hallett. Road racing, I like it, but it doesn't call to me. Like I wanted to get I've put the 720 up at Hallett, had a great time, ran some good times, and just on Michelin pilots. I didn't even put slicks on or anything, and I want to get the 765 up there, but I'll go drive it 8/10, 9/10, not really like try to break records or anything. But it, my most enjoyment comes from it being in the garage, and on a Tuesday morning I can get in it and go to work in it. So it's got to be simple. If it's a lot of work, I'm past that. It might call to me. Reza and I have talked about doing the Ferrari challenge.
Because you can have as many guys do that as you want, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be just one of you doing it.
Right, we could split a race car and split the races, and it's something we will do. I'm positive, but timing wise, I mean, I'm busy. I'm going, like I said, I'm going to Dallas this weekend for soccer. Like nothing will.
Priorities are a little different.
Yeah, nothing will trump my girls' sports, and we've got another newborn. So, now I'm starting to see why you see like 50 and 60-year-old guys doing that Ferrari challenge. It's a big commitment, big financial commitment. And if they care about their families, and they're just going to wait till the kids are a little bit older. And
have you seen that Gentleman's Drivers documentary on Netflix? What was it? I think it might have been on Netflix. It might not be anymore. It's called The Gentleman Driver.
I don't know.
It's basically, it follows like 5 or 6 Le Mans endurance teams, right?
Nice.
And they've got to be amateur. Some of them they're amateur classes. So you got like the team owner basically is the guy who's the amateur racing, and then you got 2 or 3 pros with him, and they just follow it around the world. It's really, really interesting. The guys from all over, guys from Mexico, Canada.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, and they're big, big entrepreneurs and very successful business owners, but they just love racing, so they have a team. And it's obviously with Le Mans and 24-hour Nürburgring just happened. Like it's kind of.
I see myself
really
doing some of that, and I love traveling as much as I love cars.
Yeah.
So like to mate those two together and travel the world and race Le Mans one day, like I couldn't imagine.
Right. To that point, obviously Ford GT's huge Le Mans history car.
Yeah.
If people have seen, Ford versus Ferrari, was probably most non-car people would have seen that or aware of it.
Right.
obviously you had an 05, 06
Yep,
Ford
05.
GT, but then obviously the newer ones you had to be allocated. For people listening, I'll set some context. You had to be allocated, or you had to apply for an allocation, and there was two 500 slots they let out
To begin with, yeah.
to begin with. So I know you've done a recent thing on VinWiki telling that story, but if you want to like not go into as much detail, I guess, as you did in that story, and I'll link that for people listening. But just science, for time and just tell a little bit about kind of like your recent Ford GT experience.
Yeah, so 2016 they released 500 applications, and then they doubled that, and they just took from those 26 applications, they picked another 500, so they had 1,000 cars they were going to build. 2018 they decided to build 350 more cars. The demand was huge. I think 20,000 applicants were turned in. And so I was in that. I turned in an application. The 2016 got declined. In 2018, I worked a little harder on my application, did a video, and crazy got selected out of 350 people to get one. So, and then you work with a Ford concierge person to spec the car and get delivery and all that stuff. You work with them side by side. During that process, it was really a cool experience.
Yeah. So it finally shows up. And for people listening, I'll link that video below that you explain the whole story, because it's fantastic. Because it's basically like winning the lottery, getting this car for, it doubles the price in value once, and you can't sell it within 2 years and all that stuff. But what I'm interested in is taking that car to Monterey Car Week. Like, because a lot of people, the one thing that comes across with chatting and knowing you is that you drive all of your cars. I mean, not many people can say they put 30,000 miles on a McLaren, right? Like, so you drive a lot of your cars, but shipping it to another state and then driving it out there, especially for Car Week, must have been so special.
It probably was the the best car experience I've ever had. The drive from LA to Monterey is about 400 and something miles up the PCH coastal highway. So the view is always epic. These are long sweeping turns. It's just perfect for the Ford GT. But and being in Monterey for the week, you get all the red carpet treatment that you get in hypercars. And I don't necessarily call the Ford GT a hypercar. Some people do, some people don't. I'm torn. It's special enough. It's really incredible what Ford did, being a one-off, car. It's incredible how good of a job they did on it. But it's just a neat experience to go out there and they pull the tape back for you. You can park in this spot, and. So that's my first taste of that, because you go out there in a 765 or 720, there's 100 of them or 200 of them, and every other mid-level supercar like that. And it's not to knock those cars; they're amazing. I mean, the 765 is my favorite car I've ever had. But you got to Monterey where there's 250 GTOs and McLaren F1s. Yeah. So, and that's not the purpose for me to have the Ford GT. I mean, but it is a perk. I'll be honest; like it's just a neat perk to get, and that's what allowed me most likely to get the 765 is like having a car like that. Because whenever you apply for a specialty car, like they're like, okay, what else is in your collection?
Yeah.
And saying that you got allocated a Ford GT, you didn't just go spend the $1.2 million bucks to get one. You were allocated, like, oh, well, we'll take you serious then.
Right.
And it's allowed me to order some cool Ferraris I've got coming, and all that's timing wise. It's not like I'm going to just start buying.
Sure.
I'm not going to have a $30 million car collection anytime soon, like some of these YouTube guys. That's really entertaining to watch, like the Hamilton collection and the Triple F
is nuts,
dude,
right?
It's
like,
just bonkers.
Yeah.
Do I want that? Yeah. Like,
who doesn't? Right?
I've jokingly said, which I don't really play the lottery, but if I won $100 million in the lottery, I could spend it in 24 hours. I probably would have 90 of it spent in 24 hours. The good thing is most of those cars just go up in value, but. Again, I'm obsessed with cars, and if I could daily drive a Chiron, that would be my preference.
Yeah.
I haven't driven one, so I can't know that for sure, but I'm assuming based on how good the Veyron was, the Chiron would just be perfect. But I like a little bit of luxury and comfort in my exotics.
Would you ever kind of, I mean, obviously with young family, it's kind of holds you back a little bit, but future plans, I mean, you obviously taking the Ford GT to California, plans to do any other kind of like, would you ship it halfway around the world and do a European tour? Like, is that something that's like planned, or take delivery at the Porsche dealership of something? And
well, I've got plans, and VinWiki's got another. We did several takes on different videos on VinWiki, but one of them is going to be about driving it on all 50 states. So I've got to decide. Like, that's a big commitment.
Would you do gumball?
Man, and this is no offense to the rally stuff, like the gumball type rallies, but like, I don't drink, I don't party. Like, I'm a pretty laid back guy, and I'm an introvert. Like, I enjoy talking cars.
Right.
I feel like I've seen some of the gumball rally came through here, and a lot of those dudes just like to party, and that's why they go.
And they have the money to buy nice cars.
Yeah, and they've got the money for the flashy cars. I want it as loud and as flashy as it can possibly be. Yeah. And that's a lot of those guys, it's no offense. Like, that's great. I'm glad they're able to enjoy themselves, and that's how they enjoy themselves. But, like, that scene is not really my thing.
Gotcha.
So I like going with half a dozen of our buddies local and going to small towns and back roads. And, I'm in it to drive the car.
Yeah.
And I don't have to have the party scene to enjoy that. But, will I do it? Sure, I'll probably try to experience it. Ed Boley and VinWiki was talking to me about, the rally they're doing. And, it sounds fun. If I'm around authentic car guys, then that's the beauty of Monterey. Like, you are engulfed around true car enthusiasts for an entire week. It's just euphoria. But I really genuinely do, just out of principle, want to put the 4GT in all 50 states. But it's a huge logistical thing.
Yeah. You're not driving here from Oklahoma for most of them, right? You can ship it there and then do a road trip and ship it back.
Literally leave my house.
Oh, that's what you want to do?
And drive through every state.
You might have back surgery after that.
Yeah. But I wouldn't do it all in one fell swoop.
Sure.
I'd do it in 4 or 5 day swaths. Have different friends join me for different legs of it. And I would have to find places to keep the car, for dealerships or some YouTubers I've become friends with, or, whatever the case may be. But then the car might sit for 5 or 6 or 8 weeks, in between soccer tournaments and parent-teacher conferences and all that stuff, and running businesses. Right. So, and a huge hit on the value of the car, putting 10 or 12,000 miles on it. So, but for me, it's all about the experience. That's the important piece of it. Yeah. So, that is my desire is to do it. It's just a matter of can I feasibly do it?
Right.
So
yeah, what is to that point then? What's the states that are just man, the roads out there look so good. I would love if I'm going to do one, I want to go out there and.
Well, I've got to experience California. I definitely want to do that again. Yeah. I'm going back out there this year again, but my plan as of now is to drive the 4GT out there.
Yeah.
So,
but you're not gonna have a road trip with anybody?
Yeah, Reza probably will jump in with me. I think he's going to ship his P1 out and maybe ride with me. We haven't really talked details yet. Another buddy of mine's going out there. He would probably be willing to jump in with me.
Yeah.
Part of me likes to be alone on some of it too. Yeah. I don't want to, I would only have someone in there I really enjoy talking to, of course, but sometimes it's just nice to be quiet.
Right.
I enjoy quiet time. So but yeah, and a lot of the times when you're in the middle of an experience like that, driving that through to California or whatever cool stuff I've done with cars, my experience having the car in Beverly Hills, driving up the PCH, looking back on it, it's even better than reflecting on it, seeing the pictures. I enjoyed it even more than when you're in it. So part of me, even if it's a chore to drive at 50 states, just the memories I would make.
Yeah, because you could make an epic kind of movie or book or whatever of wow, this is all the places I've taken. And it just becomes an epic coffee table book, right?
Yeah,
that you sit with forever.
I like doing unique things, not necessarily things that other people can't do, but maybe people won't do.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a good chance I'd be the only guy that's ever done that in all 50 states in a $1 million 4GT. I think it'd just be a neat thing to be able to put a stamp on.
Yeah. Final question, because I know you got to go. What is I mean, what is the next one? What are you chasing right now? What are you going to be close to? Like, what is, because as car guys, mind never stops and cars keep coming out. So,
well, I've been chasing a Veyron or a P1 for a while, and I'm starting to realize that the desire for reliability is too great. Sure. And like just seeing Reza, he won't mind me saying it, but like his P1 was in the shop for some very minor things after Car Week last year. Yeah. And it was in the shop for 5 or 6 months. And fortunately he's got other cars. I would have other cars, but like I just don't think, and as hard as I am on cars, like I just drive them hard. Like I think I would, if I bought a 12-year-old Veyron, I think I would expose all of the 12-year-old parts. And then you throw in the expense on top of the downtime. So this is recent, like I've experiencing the Ford GT and like new and reliable, like I think I'm pivoting towards like, instead of going to the F40 or the P1 or the Veyron, like cars that whenever they came out, they were like the ultimate dream cars, and I've pined for them ever since. Yeah. I think on the big cars, I'm going to start, looking at what's coming out in the future. So like the P1 replacement is something I'm definitely got my eye on, and I'm working on building that relationship with my McLaren dealer on that. The Valhalla, Aston Martin, I saw that at Car Week last year in person. It might be the most breathtaking car I've ever seen in person. I mean, I'm just smitten by it.
I just saw the videos with a race car going around.
The Valkyrie.
Going around Laguna Seca, which is like, I watched Smee's video on it this morning. It's like, wow.
Yeah, and so the Valhalla is like a more streetable version of that, like so that you could really put some miles on. And it's, it's sub $1 million base MSRP. So I feel like the thing is right now with that car specifically, I was going to put a pause on it last year at Car Week, but Aston Martin's in a really big funk financially. So I didn't.
You don't know if you're going to get that money back or a car.
And they wanted $200,000 down.
Yeah. And to finance them building it.
If it was exactly. Yeah. And if it was like 6 months or a year or 18 months guaranteed. But like the Valkyrie's been a 5-year thing, and they're just getting the cars out. So the Valhalla, I'm not parking $200,000. I'm a blue collar dude from Oklahoma. Yeah. Like I don't park $200,000 on a car I might see in 5 years. Yeah. So, but the Valhalla and the P1 replacement are my two like big cars that hopefully we'll be in Oklahoma one day.
Yeah, love to see it. Well, mate, I know we got to run, but thanks so much for spending some time telling some car stories. We'll have to do it again whenever you get the next new one. And for people listening, I'll post a link to Andy's landscaping business website. One of the other things we didn't mention is the home mag that you guys send out, which is really cool. So people get that. I get that every month or whatever it is, which is nice to see. And also, Wales is in the World Cup group with the USA and England and Iran. So we're going to have to talk some football. First time in 58 years Wales has made the World Cup, so I am pumped. Gareth Bale is making it. Gareth Bale is going to be in the World Cup, and I cannot wait.
Big time.
So I'll have to talk some soccer when that comes around. I think in the November. Yeah. Yep. So thanks so much, mate. Really appreciate it. And for people listening, we'll catch you next episode. Cheers. This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.